Well, the gag order has been lifted, and Roger Stone joins us via telephone now. Roger, long time no speak. Good to talk with you. I hope you're doing well. How are things?
It's really great to be back with you and to have my constitutionally guaranteed voice back again.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
I had to live through 2 years of really 16 months to be exact, of the fake news media, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, you know the crowd, reporting Roger Stone will be charged with treason. Roger Stone will be charged with espionage. Roger Stone will be charged with being the link between the Russian intelligence and the Trump campaign. Roger Stone will be charged with money laundering millions of dollars of Russian money for the Trump campaign. None of those things were true. They were all reported. None of those things were true. And at the end of the day, 29 heavily armed, SWAT team-clad FBI agents charged my house at 6 o'clock in the morning, arriving in 17 armored vehicles with a government helicopter overhead, 2 government amphibious units on the canal behind my house, a K-9 unit, I guess in case I tried to flee, and a battering ram to break in the front door of my house to arrest me for a white-collar, nonviolent crime where I have no previous criminal record, don't own a firearm, not because I don't support the Second Amendment.
That's the thing that disappointed me the most.
House.
To interrupt you, that was the thing that disappointed me about you the most. We got that, Roger.
Well,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Grandchildren in the house. A fight I've lost with my wife. So and I didn't have a valid passport. So the government knew I wasn't a flight risk, which is how they justified this $1.1 million arrest. That's what the taxpayers paid. And of course, totally coincidentally, CNN arrived exactly 11 minutes before the FBI to set up a camera 25 feet from my front door where they could film the whole thing, even though the street, a dead-end street, had been sealed off and no other media was allowed in. How coincidental.
That is so coincidental. Yes, because that's just, I'm sure that they just happened to be in the area and slipped in and there was nobody tipping anybody off or organizing anything. And I have to say, this is what always, and I want to talk about the crazy juror as well coming up, but what really got me with this whole thing is they kept saying, oh, well, you know, 2 of the charges, one of the convictions, obstructing a congressional investigation. For the sake of, let's play devil's advocate for a moment. Even if obstruction of a congressional investigation, that presupposes that said investigation was a legitimate investigation and wasn't predicated upon an abuse of FISA law and wasn't predicated upon wireless surveillance or phone tapping, surveillance. Now we know the full story. It was an illegitimate, it wasn't an investigation, because if it was an investigation, they would have followed the protocol as legally prescribed. That there was a witch hunt. So you were not complicit in a witch hunt. That's how, so what gets me is how in the world you can be found of unlawful behavior because you didn't engage in an unlawful action already.
Well, not only that, but most people don't even know what it was I was convicted of. So try to understand this. I was convicted of lying to the Congressional Committee about the Trump campaign's interest in the WikiLeaks disclosures, even though candidate Trump had mentioned his interest 142 times in September and October. So there was no underlying crime to lie about, and I was very forthright about that. And as far as witness tampering, the so-called witness that I threatened said both on the stand and in a letter to the judge that he never felt threatened, that was just the nature of our relationship. We talk harshly to each other. But Andrew Weissman, who wrote my indictment, there's a real criminal, he tacked that one on to try to make it sound more nefarious. I have death threats from the so-called witness. It was banter, but they turned it into something else. Look, I was targeted for one reason. They put intense pressure on me. They offered me a deal on July 24th, 2019, that they would argue for no prison time if I would simply testify against Donald Trump regarding 36 telephone conversations we had in 2016 all of which were longer than 30 minutes. And if I would just confess and come clean and admit that that had been about coordinating with the Russians, they would go easy on me. And I said, no, that is the real reason I was prosecuted. The judge, when she sentenced me, said, you have been found guilty of covering up for Donald Trump. No, the exact opposite is true. I was found guilty because I refused to bear false witness against Donald Trump.
Exactly. You refused to engage in an illegitimate and illegal action. Thus, the law is reversed. We live in an upside down world. I mean, I guess this is the new normal right now. And that's what concerns me, because all of the individuals, and I've made this point previously many times on the show, for even people on the left that always scream about the injustice of the justice system, if they were consistent on this, then this story would have struck a chord. But it just goes to show that I think that justice is situational for people based upon their political agenda. This juror this boggles my mind. This individual, this particular juror that's been in the headlines, was so unbelievably vocally outspoken partisan and hated the administration, hated the president, hated anybody that was associated with him. I'm actually shocked that individual actually made it up to be a juror.
Well, here I think is the part people don't understand. Tamika Hart, that's her name, she outed herself on CNN, so I have not violated the court's seal by telling you her name. She identified herself, attacked me by name on the day I was arrested and subsequently, and attacked Donald Trump on her Facebook account throughout 2019. And then she would take the Facebook posts and put them up on Twitter. But they were on private settings at the time of my trial. So the argument Stone's lawyers should have known, there was no way for us to know. We looked at all of the jurors' social media for prejudicial comments. Also, it's recognized that Judge Jackson ruled that if one was a partisan Democrat and one was anti-Trump or an opponent of the administration, that would not disqualify you from being a juror in this case. And that is evidently the law. I find that odd, but my jury had no Republicans, no military veterans, no NRA members, no union members, nobody with less than a college education. It was not a diverse jury, to say the least. The very clear bias, and after the trial, Tamika Hart, the forewoman, closed her Facebook account and opened a new one. So the Facebook account she had since 2008, which had been on a private setting during the time of my trial, she closed down and opened a new one. And when asked in a hearing why she did that, she said she just wanted to take a break. Well, why wouldn't you just suspend your account for a while? Why close it and open an entire new one? When asked about specific posts, she said she couldn't remember what they were about. But she did call the president a Klansman. She did say he was the Klan president and that anyone who supports him is a racist. Would that not include me?
Yeah.
I think it would. I'm not a racist, but I am a Trump supporter. So legal authorities as diverse as Judge Napolitano, Alan Dershowitz, even the professor from Yale, whose name escapes me at this moment,
I know who you're talking about.
have all said that the U.S. Supreme Court says that any defendant is entitled to a impartial and indifferent jury. This woman was not
Neither
indifferent.
of those things. Right. She was not impartial. She was not indifferent.
And when Professor Jonathan Turley of Yale, who was not a conservative, not a Trump supporter, says that, the judge's decision, I think, is just wrongly decided.
And you were denied a new trial.
Correct. So it's certainly strong grounds for appeal. If I end up having to go that route, I think I would win on appeal. But also recognize the gag order itself. The judge's argument was Roger Stone's social media postings and his comments in the media could taint the jury. What about the coverage of the Washington Post, the dominant newspaper where I was being tried, and the daily attacks on me by CNN and MSNBC?
Right.
Do you think they tainted the jury?
Yeah. No, this sounds so much to me. This reminds me of the John Doe persecutions in Wisconsin with the Scott Walker situation, and they put a gag order on all these individuals that were helping Scott Walker during the recall and just tarred and feathered them in the press. So much false maliciousness, and finally the state Supreme Court had to get involved. Let me ask you this: because I and a lot of other people, this to me, I find, frankly, it's a little frightening to realize that it doesn't matter if they can do this to someone like you, if they can bend the law, suspend the law so as to engage in persecution of somebody like the president. Who's to say that this isn't going to be done against just a regular, average, everyday person who is not politically involved, has no political associations or connections? I think people's faith in the system, I know mine's entirely gone, but I think a lot of people, I don't know if they're ever going to recover that. Give me your thoughts on that, because that to me is the real big threat that's been uncovered by all of this.
See, I think the real issue is two-tier justice. James Clapper lied to Congress about whether or not we had a metadata program tracking American citizens. Mm-hmm. That is a consequential lie. McCabe lied. Comey lied. Hillary lied. Strzok lied. Page lied. Mm-hmm. Mueller himself in his testimony. 3 examples of just outright lies. None of them are being prosecuted. Comey was referred to the Justice Department twice for prosecution. He is not prosecuted. The House Intelligence Committee sends my testimony to Robert Mueller with no recommendation, but I am prosecuted because I was for Donald Trump. Now, Michael Avenatti is being let out of prison. Michael Cohen is being let out of prison. Rick Gates, who perjured himself at my trial, is being let out of prison.
Oh my gosh!
But I'm ordered to report for prison next Thursday. I'm 67 years old. We're in the middle of a pandemic. So there is a different system of justice.
It is very different.
If you're a supporter of Donald Trump.
Last quick question for you: do you think that President Trump will pardon you?
I honestly don't know. I can only tell you that I am praying that he will. In other words, I know Donald Trump for 40 years. Nobody tells him what to do. Nobody tells him what not to do. He has a great sense of fairness and justice, and he's been following this case very carefully. And by the way, he does have a First Amendment right to comment on the case anytime he likes. That's not interfering with our judicial system. Please give me a break. I am praying fervently for one. I have no promise of one. I was never promised one. I have not made a formal application for one, even though one is not required. I am hoping that he will do the right thing. If not, if I'm incarcerated, I will appeal, and I will win on appeal.
Well, and I would hope that if it went to that route, went to appeal, that you would. But really, ultimately, I think that you are owed a pardon, quite frankly. And I hope that the president has followed this, which I'm sure he has. And I hope that he hears that, and I hope that comes to fruition. Roger Stone. Oh, good to talk with you. We'll have to stay in touch, and I'm glad that you made it through with your sass intact, and hopefully you will be a pardoned man very soon. Thanks for joining us, Roger.
Folks who want to help can sign the petition at freerogerstone.com.